So our first speaker is John C. Havens, and he's going to speak about consciousness and AI. John is a contributing writer for Mashable, The Guardian, and Slate. He's the author of Hacking Happiness, Why Your Personal Data Counts and How Tracking It Can Change the World. He recently published a second title. It's called Heartificial Intelligence, Embracing Our Humanity to Maximize Machines. He'll be speaking to us about what AI can teach us about consciousness, as well as ramifications for conscious machines on our world. Please welcome John.
What's up, Brooklyn? Thank you for having me, the Empiricist League. I'm honored to be here and talk about consciousness and artificial intelligence in 9 minutes. Always fun. Little background about me. I went to college thinking I was going to be a minister. I ended up being an actor for 15 years on Broadway and TV. This is my pivotal role. I'm sure you remember. I was a technician in Thomas Crown Affair. I'm sure you remember that role. It is a good movie. I've spoken for years. My sort of sweet spot is emerging technology and well-being. My dad was a psychiatrist. My mom is still a minister, so I kind of live in the subjective realm. This is me in Dubai. Spoken at South by 6 or 7 times, TEDx's, etc. I'm currently a full-time contractor with the IEEE organization. It's the world's largest technology organization, about 500,000 members. And I'm executive director of a program with 100 AI experts, working to sort of create, in general, kind of an artificial intelligence code of ethics. And I should say, just to be clear, I'm not an AI expert. I've been immersed in the field for about 4 or 5 years and interviewed hundreds of people, and I'm with these other hundreds of people, so I'm sort of smart by association, one hopes. These are my last 3 books, and that's my Twitter handle. So I wanted to talk about sort of 3 things in terms of AI and consciousness, and I'm starting with the science of it. In general, being very general for time's sake, there's sort of 2 camps about AI and consciousness. One of the camps, usually the term is called computationalist. And this means in general that people think that the brain is essentially an organic computer, and then the mind is the software that runs on the brain. So in one sense, if you can copy the physiology down to the neuron level, you have a new brain. And by new brain, that also means consciousness. The other camp would be the camp that's like, cool, but don't forget about the mind and subjective reality and all that. And along those lines, I don't know if you can read this, but a woman who's a big cognitive scientist named Maria Cecilia de Dios has this great quote where she says, "Now, the answer to the question about AI being a form of mind is a straightforward no, if we assume that mind and consciousness comprise more than information processing." And again, this is not to sound pejorative with a computationalist mindset, but it's quite prevalent. The logic that if something can be there's a computation aspect to it, processing, then you're good to go. All the rest of the stuff is kind of bullshit. The obvious argument is that consciousness is about being aware of the internal and external world, about the capacity to feel and experience the world in a subjective manner. And along the lines in terms of subjectivity, one of my favorite writers, a guy named David Glertner from Yale, wrote this very, to me, pivotal article called The Closing of the Scientific Mind. And he said this, he's very anti-computationalist, which may be obvious, but your subjective conscious experience is just as real as the tree outside your window or the photons striking your retina, even though you alone feel it. Many philosophers and scientists today tend to dismiss the subjective and focus wholly on an objective third-person reality, a reality that will be just the same if men had no minds. They treat subjective reality as a footnote, or they announce that actually it doesn't even exist. So I'm not a computationalist, but I get why people come from there. I used to be angry about it, but not anymore. Like I said, I kind of live in the subjective realm, and so since I was a kid, faith is still the central part of my life. I was an actor for years, where introspection is the craft, watching people so you can imbue a character and have a real reality that people believe. And then as a writer, I really have to watch people, and most of your craft there is watching people and reporting accurately. So for me, the subjective reality is kind of where I've lived most of my adult life. So again, I'm very excited for tonight to hear the other speakers, and I'd love to learn if I don't know something, but that's my experience. The emotion. And I love this guy. No one ever laughs, but I love this guy for some reason. One thing about the work that I do, my dad was a psychiatrist, and I study a lot of positive psychology, which is the actual study using empirical science for the past 16 years of knowing how to create a state of flourishing. And that's meditation, Well, it can be meditation. It's things like when you're altruistic to someone, you can actually see, if you put someone under an MRI, you can actually see a well-being sort of increase. Anyway, there's metrics to it that make it empirical. But I bring this up in terms of AI. In the 60s, there's a famous scientist very big in the AI world called Weizenbaum, and he created a chatbot. And if you know what a chatbot is, it's not AI in any way. It's just a simple mimicking program. And he had this chatbot in his office, and his secretary apparently would always talk to Eliza. It was named Eliza after Eliza Doolittle from My Fair Lady. And the chatbot, if you haven't ever used it, is very built, like I said, on mimicking. So you say things like, "Hi, Eliza," and Eliza's like, "Hi," and you say, "I'm having a bad day." And then Eliza says, "Why are you having a bad day?" "Well, I broke up with my girlfriend." "Why'd you break up with your girlfriend?" "She got mad at me." "Why'd you get mad at me?" "I slept with another woman." "Why did you sleep with another woman?" "Fuck you, that's not your business." Right? And I'm joking, but that's what happens, right? The Turing test, we all pass a point, and I talk about it with my kids with Siri. You know, how much woodchuck of a woodchuck could you? Look at Siri. The emotional aspect of who we are, right? If we ignore it in terms of AI, science, and consciousness, it's a really fundamental part of who we are. So this is a great book. It's one of the seminal books for me in my work. Sherry Turkle from MIT, Alone Together. The attachments I describe don't follow from whether computational objects really have emotion or intelligence, because they don't. The attachments follow from what they evoke in their users. Our new objects don't so much fool us into thinking they're communicating with us. Roboticists have learned these few triggers that help us fool ourselves. We don't need much. We're ready to enter the romance. And I love that quote because, again, as people creating technology, and this is the work now that I'm doing with ethics, if you build technology de facto, meaning let's build it fast and let's make it cool. I mean, that's great. I've been a geek for years. But I know, for instance, like companion robots that have effective computing sensors, emotion sensors. You put them in the room with a kid. I'm not saying a specific robot right now today, but this is a function it can do. And it can say, like, "Susie, you look sad today." The people creating the tech think, well, this is a cool thing. I want to help little girls not feel sad. That's awesome. But I know from my dad being a psychiatrist, telling someone they look sad, the bias, it can really fuck them up, right? You have to know that. And so now a lot of this work that I'm doing is cross-discipline, bringing people together from different fields. Ethics, really quick wrapping up. You probably heard about this. It's the tunnel problem. It's the modern version of a trolley problem in philosophy. A lot of discussions you hear about things like ethics and AI, which also relates to consciousness, hopefully, is this sense of it's very binary. In this instance, is the car at fault or is the girl at fault? I'd like to move beyond that. And in my latest book, I have this concept of what I call values by design, where a lot of what we need to focus on is everybody has their own subjective truth, right? We need, with personal data, whether it's a personal data cloud or whatever, a way to project your personal truth in the digital and virtual arena. That way, when AI, we have all these wonderful tools that can track us, and they can tell you almost better than you what you know about your life. You like coffee at 6 o'clock last Tuesday. Done. Granted, the tech will know that better than I do. But if we don't have this, what I call values by design, as part of the consciousness that we're moving into, that can be a real issue and problem. And that's it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.